Florida has the Oilers right where they want them before Game 4.
Can the Oilers bounce back? Will they need to make a switch in net?
Skinner or Pickard?
We'll talk about it all on this Tuesday night Stanley Cup Final edition of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before, only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hello there, hockey fans, and welcome to another episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. Appreciate you guys following along once again. I'm Cam Stewart, a sad Boston Bruins fan from Boston, now on the third coast.
And I'm Tyler Feldman, a lifelong Penguins fan, born and raised in Pittsburgh, but currently loving life in Austin, Texas. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Cam, last night was a disaster for Edmonton. It was the total opposite for Florida. Either way, it's a new day, and we're 2 days away from Game 4. What needs to change if you're the Oilers? What needs to stay the same if you're the Panthers?
And they get 2 full days to think about it, Tyler. A lot of stewing going on right now in those hotel rooms for the coaching staff.
Stewing about Stuart.
Oh, there you go.
Boom.
What is stewing in Stu Skinner land? Because look, all of a sudden, this is kind of turned south. We said before this series, and I think all people following the Oilers the last couple of years have said and thought the same thing. You're on borrowed time with Stuart Skinner. You know, he was excellent last year's postseason. He was awful at the beginning of this one, bounces back, but you know it could happen at any minute. And kind of out of nowhere in this Game 3, it's like you look back and you're like, oh, this has not been a good series. 13 goals for him on 97 shots, an .866 save percentage. So far in the Stanley Cup Final, it was .924 in the Western Conference Final. That's a big, big difference there. 58 points on that. Kris Knoblauch said post-game, we haven't made a decision on goaltending. Stu, I don't think he had much of a chance on many of those goals, excuse me. I think collectively, goaltender, defense, all our forwards, we all have to be better. Now, that is true, that last part, right? They all have to be better. But we said this after the show last night, Tyler, and you pointed it out during the game. Feels like they might have figured out Stuart Skinner, at least the spot where to beat him.
Short side was an issue. It was also an issue for Pickard, too. So I don't know what it was about the Oilers netminders last night blocking that near side post, that short side, but it was a major problem. Now, Kris Knoblauch, he took the anti-Peter DeBoer route. He didn't throw his goalie under the bus. He didn't throw either under the bus. He said, we as a team collectively need to play better. I agree with that, but this is a huge decision that's looming over your head going into Game 4, which I said last night was must win. Yeah. And to win Game 4, to bounce back after a 5-goal loss on the road, you've got to figure out who your guy is going to be in net. On the one hand, you have Stuart Skinner, the guy you've leaned on for the majority of these playoffs. And for me, if Knoblauch goes with Stuart Skinner, he's saying, hey, you know what? Game 3, it was a fluke. We're going to bounce back. We're not going to make Game 3's loss bigger than it actually is. But on the other hand, if you go with Pickard, you're saying this team needs some big change and they need some fire inside. And to get that fire, to generate that drive, I'm going to throw a huge wrench and put Pickard in net. Now, yes, Pickard is undefeated, but he's had the easier of the mental mindsets going into his games where he's coming in from injury, Skinner not playing well. So all the pressure is on Skinner. How does he handle that pressure? If I'm Knoblauch, I go with Skinner. I stay with Skinner because that tells me as a teammate, as a player, if I'm an Edmonton forward or defenseman, you name it, I'm thinking to myself, okay, Stuart Skinner is still our guy. Game 3 was a disaster, but it's not a big disaster. We can still figure this out with Stuart Skinner, who has been the main guy in net for us during these playoffs.
And for those of you that are yelling at your phone or your TV or your laptop, like look at the numbers. Calvin Pickard, he is 6-0 in this postseason, and that's when Edmonton really caught fire in that LA series and then into the Vegas series as well. But his numbers are not better than Stuart Skinner's. Like you even put in Skinner's Game 3 performance in the first 2 games in LA, and he's still got a better goals against average, a better save percentage. It's not by that much, but I don't know if you can expect Calvin Pickard to come in and be some sort of savior of your season. And any coach will tell you, this is the time if you're going to make a decision. This is probably it. If it's 3-1 and you make that decision, that is last-ditch effort. We need something. But what I think is interesting, Tyler, is the context in which Calvin Pickard came in. Because I think we would have said the same thing in the first 2 games in LA. Stuart Skinner was not good, but he wasn't horrible. You weren't like, oh my God, this guy can't stop a beach ball. Edmonton sucked in those first 2 games. Like they kept going to the penalty box. They couldn't kill a penalty. And does this all start to sound familiar? Like they sucked the first 2 games, and Skinner kind of became a sacrificial lamb, and Pickard comes in, and it kind of gets the Oilers to get their crap together for the rest of that series and going forward. It feels like we're in that same spot now, but it's the Stanley Cup Final, Tyler. Like I think I'm riding with you on this one. I think you probably stick with Skinner and look at the guys in your locker room and say, you know what? I'm not doing this again. This is not Stu Skinner's fault entirely. Again, not been great, but it's not his fault entirely. You guys need to figure this crap out because we were playing just fine in front of Stu Skinner for 2.5 series before this happened. You know?
It's kind of like in the state of Texas, you need a license plate not just on the back of your car, but also on the front of your car. Let's say Stuart Skinner is that back license plate, tried and true. He's the guy you've gone to throughout the majority of these playoffs. That's the one that's always going to be there. Calvin Pickard, the front license plate. Legally speaking, you need to have that front license plate, but some states don't require it. In Edmonton's situation, neither one of those goaltenders are Hall of Famers in my eyes, at least not yet. And so you have 2 options that are good, not great. Either way, you're staring down Sergei Bobrovsky, 36-year-old Russian who has played phenomenally well in the Stanley Cup Final and throughout these playoffs. At a certain point, can you match that consistency? I'm not sure. So you got to figure out the goaltender situation. You stick with Skinner because you don't want to make Game 3 seem bigger than what it was. You say, hey, it's on you guys in front of Stuart to get it together and figure it out. And you see what happens in Game 4. If he needs to get pulled again, well, you can say to yourself, this was the decision that made the most sense. To me, putting Pickard between the pipes for Game 4 would be way too drastic of a move at this point in the series.
Mm-hmm. It is a decision that will be weighing on Kris Knoblauch and the brass for the Edmonton Oilers down in South Florida. A couple of full days off in South Florida. What can you possibly get up to? They will
not
be
a lot of good. Not a lot of good.
Not usually. No. But they will be thinking about this before Game 4 on Thursday night. Edmonton sucked all the way around in this Game 3, but that is because Florida was Florida. They were pretty good. We will tell you how the Panthers shut down Draisaitl in Game 3 and if they can keep that up going forward in this series. We're going to do it next on Locked On NHL Game Night. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. You just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster, okay? If the Oilers do go down in this series, they lose in 5 games, they will be able to post their goaltending job on Indeed and get qualified candidates and get them fast. Look, we've all been in that spot. You need to hire, you need to find someone, you need it right now. Pressure's on. Every day without them is a setback, kind of like a good goalie. That's exactly what Indeed's is sponsored jobs. That's when they come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you could speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now. That's Indeed.com/LOCKEDON and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That helps everybody out. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Back on Locked On NHL Game Night. Guys, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, find us here after every game and the days in between. Like right now, as we are talking about what is still a pretty entertaining Stanley Cup Final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, even though I'm not sure what we got in the last 20 minutes of Game 3. I hesitate to call it hockey. I'm Cam Stewart, Tyler Feldman here. Tyler, we talked most of last night after Game 3 about how bad Edmonton was, and that is a big story. But what feels inevitable, what we talk about again, is how good the Panthers were. I mean, the Panthers sucked them in to playing their game and did it all night long. And now all of a sudden, there are some major concerns for the Oilers, concerns that we have heard in the past, right? That it's a two-man team. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, this whole postseason, they were looking like much more than that, and yet Florida has limited them to that again. The McDavid and or Leon Draisaitl have been on the ice for 8 of Edmonton's 9 goals in this series. And I know the Panthers fans that are in the comments think that McDavid just isn't good. They're the only fan base that thinks that. But I choose to say that McDavid is the best in the world, but the Panthers are doing a really good job on him, especially when they're playing at home.
Cam, anytime you have DJ Khaled DJing pregame, anytime you have Bam Adebayo, defensive-oriented basketball star, slamming the drum pregame, you had to figure defense was going to be the name of the game for the Florida Panthers in Game 3. Don't ask me how. Don't ask me why. But the pictures were there pregame.
The writing was on the wall.
The writing was on the wall. It was chipped and engraved into the ice down in Sunrise, Florida. Look, the reality is McDavid and Draisaitl, tremendous players, out-of-this-world players, 2 probable future Hall of Famers. Definitely one, most likely the other. You can't be perfect every night. And when you have 2 guys that you can focus on 2 separate lines, think about it like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. At what point do you put those guys on the same line? Is this the game?
We have seen a little bit, yeah.
Is this the game we need to see both of those guys on the same line? Do we need to see Jeff Skinner activated and be put on McDavid's line? Because I think that could really help too. But whatever happened in Game 3, you can credit Florida defensively. They had great puck movement. The forecheck was there. The back check was there. The fire was there, and we didn't see that from Edmonton. But Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, they're human. They did not play well, combined -3 in Game 3. How do you compete with the depth on Florida? Because at this point, through 3 games, even though the first 2 games needed overtime plus, we've seen that the depth on Florida is much greater. And so as the series progresses and guys get tired, I want to maybe refrain from saying tired because there's so many days in between.
yeah, too full here.
But you can see that the depth on this Florida team, lines 1 through 4, are making an impact. I mean, what happened last night with Edmonton? Not only did lines 3 and 4, bottom 6, totally evaporate, but all you do, if you're Florida, is take care of the top 2 lines, and they got that job done last night. So credit Florida. How can Edmonton, how can they change things? McDavid and Draisaitl, unfortunately, if you're Edmonton, they've got to figure it out.
And part of the problem with all the penalties they took in Game 3 isn't just the obvious of like, hey, you're shorthanded the whole time, but it's not putting those guys on the ice in favorable situations. Both those guys have been out on penalty kills, but like you're not putting them in positions to score. When that's what you're getting, when you have to have them on the ice at this point to score a goal, like that is the biggest problem. Not even just that they score, like Florida scored on 3 of 11 power plays,
3 of 11.
But that's all 8, all the other 8 that you killed off. That's all time that McDavid and Draisaitl are not getting scoring chances. And you saw it in this one. Like, obviously we know with Edmonton, power play or even strength, when those guys are on the ice, their whole game is for McDavid to carry the puck in the zone. Like, and he's the best. He's the best. So most of the time it works. Game 3, it didn't work. They had to dump. How many times they have to dump it in? That's not Edmonton's game. That's Florida to a T.
They took a ton of dumps.
A lot of dumps. Just a lot of dumps.
So many flushes.
Playing like dump, truly. But I mean, seriously, they had to dump and chase the whole game, and that's just not what they are. You talked about the -3 combined. That is a really damning stat for those two guys in game 3. And it's kind of interesting to talk about because this game was the 11th time the Panthers have scored 5 or more goals in a playoff game this year, which I think they're one of only 5 teams to ever do that. But it was their defense that stood out. And as much as we talk about the goaltender on the other side, how about Sergei Bobrovsky, man? He was excellent through the first 3 games of the final last year and then took a big dip, was not very good in the final the year before in 2023. He has been money, absolute money. 42 saves in each of the first 2 games, 237 goals against average, and a .928 save percentage. Let's go back to Stu Skinner for a second. .866 save percentage in this series. Bobrovsky on the other end, .928. We said if Florida can dominate the goaltender position, they will win this series. They're definitely doing this so far. It's kind of been a little unsung, but Bobrovsky's been awesome.
I would say that game 1, he was tremendous. So was Skinner to that point.
True. Yep.
They both made tremendous saves on both ends of the ice. Game 2, he was really good. Not great, really good. And game 3, this was his best performance, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it was also, to your point and what we just discussed, when you're being forced to dump the puck because you've committed 11 penalties, you're not putting yourself in a position to push and be aggressive offensively. They really needed 1 or 2 or 3, maybe even 4 shorthanded chances, but we saw none of that. We really did not see any legitimate shorthanded chances for the Edmonton Oilers offensively. But when they did get chances in front of Bobrovsky, he made the save.
Yep.
And he was brawling. And then Skinner, that first goal he let up wasn't that great. He was out of position, and that kind of set the stage for what transpired the rest of that game.
Skinner was swimming on that first goal. He had no idea where
what he was doing.
It was bizarre. And to your point in there too, like Bobrovsky had some big saves early in this game. Like before Edmonton was completely out of this thing, they had some chances before it even got to 2-0, and Bobrovsky made some really nice saves that kind of flew under the radar because of how the rest of the game went. But you just need to be better than the other goalie a lot of the time, and he has been much better than the other goalie, much better than Stu Skinner. There's no talk as to whether Sergei Babroski will not be playing in game 4. Now, the last thing I kind of want to talk about in this Florida dominance to close out this segment is it feels like, Tyler, and maybe this is just even too basic that it's cliched, but if this is the way this series is going to go, like if Edmonton is going to be like, yeah, we'll answer the bell. We can be tough too. We can hit back. This might not make it back to South Florida for game 6. This is going to be a quick series. If that's the way that Edmonton thinks, that's the statement that Edmonton thinks they need to make.
Probably not. Now, I will say we have been talking about just how dominant Florida has been for almost 48 hours now.
Yep.
But what I will say is Edmonton has the talent, and we've seen it already. They could very well dominate game 4 and win game 4 on the road. They've had success on the road over the course. I think they came into last night's I think they've won 6 of their last 8 road games in these playoffs. So we very well could be talking about something entirely different after Thursday, because I wouldn't be shocked if Edmonton bounces back and wins game 4. Certainly everything that we've talked about, the tone in which we've said it in, pats Florida on the back, but one win for Edmonton, and we've got a 2-2 series. So part of me, as we continue to talk about this series, the Stanley Cup Final, I'm trying to catch myself and make sure that we also present the idea, the concept that all Edmonton has to do is win game 4, and this series is tied at 2, and game 3 really holds no bearings on the future of this series.
And I think what's been surprising in this series is that clearly 37 is the new 27, and 40 is the new 30. We are getting some big-time performances from the old guys in this series, and there's two Panthers in particular, one old, one not as old, who are making some money in this Stanley Cup Final. We'll tell you who those are coming up next on Locked On NHL Game Night.
But first, there is truly nothing like playoff hockey. Just ask myself, ask Cam. We love talking about it. The energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action. And with the Stanley Cup Final really heating up, there's never been a better time to see it live. And Gametime makes getting inside the arena both fast and affordable. Gametime gives you last-minute ticket deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic seat views, and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. Look, here's what I love about using Gametime. You can save big time with zone deals. They pick the best seats at the lowest price. There's also priority mention, which are last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Plus, I can see my exact seat view before checkout. That gives me total confidence, sometimes, which I do not have using other ticket providers. And Gametime includes fees up front. It backs every order with their ticket coverage guarantee, covering cancellations, job loss, and even offering 24-hour returns. It's honestly a life hack for getting incredible tickets on the fly. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
NHL Game Night, Cam Stewart, Tyler Feldman. I think we can both tell you a couple of certainties. One, hockey is the greatest sport. The NHL playoffs is the best playoffs. And typically getting old sucks unless you're playing in the 2025 Stanley Cup Final. It's been the old guys so far, Tyler. Corey Perry, 3 points in 3 games, including that big game-tying goal. All right, we've said enough about Corey Perry because Brad Marchand has been arguably the story of this postseason. How did this become the spring of Brad Marchand here?
My biggest theory.
Well, actually, don't tell me exactly why, because it hurts to play that back. But he's become the face of this playoff.
Here's what I'll say. My strongest theory on this matter as to why we're seeing Corey Perry, Brad Marchand, the older guy, Sergei Bobrovsky's 36.
Yeah,
why we're seeing the old guys dominate is the stuff off the ice. I'm around the fitness space a lot, Cam, and the ice baths, the saunas, the in-season weightlifting, everything, the nutrition, the diet, everything is at such a high level that you're seeing athletes. I mean, look at LeBron James. Now that's that's an anomaly. But what I'm saying is you're seeing athletes reach older ages and still making an impact in their career. My theory is because of what's being provided to them and for them off the ice. The preparation, both mentally, how to best mentally prepare for the Stanley Cup Final, how to physically prepare, how to make sure you're treating your body right. And it's not just during the playoffs. It's an entire buildup throughout the entire year. So credit the training staffs, the nutrition staffs. This league, athletes today, they've got it really good, and they should, because they're also making a boatload of money. So they better be performing under the contracts that they're working with.
Yeah. Sam Bennett, not old yet. Actually, only about a year older than me. He's going to turn 29 in a week and a half here. He's been big time in this series. It's been him and Marchand going back and forth for the Conn Smythe, it feels like, in this postseason. Bennett leads the postseason in goals with 14. 4 goals in this series, plus 2 in the Stanley Cup Final. Marchand also 4 goals in the series, +4 rating, and has only taken 1 penalty. Wow. How about that? Has a shorthanded goal, a power play goal, an overtime game-winning goal. These guys are both pests, and they are both UFAs at the end of this season. Florida will have some room to sign one, if not both of these guys, but it feels like one at 37, one at 29, Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett are playing their ways into a big-time payday starting next year, tax-free or not, Tyler.
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm not going to get as defensive as Bettman, but these guys are playing their way into a bag, man. This has been huge.
Unbelievable. Bennett has been tremendous. 14 goals. You couldn't predicted that. It's insane. Same thing with Brad Marchand. You thought his career was going down. Not to that degree. Maybe this way, just a steady, decline as you get older. But he has shown no signs of that.
Right? Yeah.
There's a different energy. There's leading by example with the way in which the older guys are playing, and it's a big reason why Florida's up 2-1 right now. We came in to this Stanley Cup Final talking about Edmonton having the experience playing in this game, in this series, in the Stanley Cup Final a season ago. Well, let's see what their experience is made of in Game 4. Can they bounce back? Because we know that the veterans on this Florida Panthers team are presenting the right sort of energy to the rest of the locker room, telling those guys, look, 2 more wins, we're lifting Lord Stanley for the 2nd straight year. There's a lot at stake. And when you have veteran guys performing well and not just leading well, that's a dangerous combination.
And it feels like there isn't a team in this league that wouldn't want Sam Bennett. I mean, we've talked about it off air a few times. Some of these, like a Montreal, right? That's young. They need some of that edge in the postseason. This guy brings it to you. Like, would you, if you're a GM, are you thinking about 7 by 10 with this new salary cap for someone like Sam Bennett? 3 by 8 for Brad Marchand, even at his age?
Maybe.
A contending team's got to think about it, right?
Look at what you're getting out of Nate Schmidt in Edmonton. He's got 5 assists.
Yeah. Big part of the series.
Schmidt, man. McDavid has 5 assists for Florida. I said Edmonton back there, but look, you never know when you're going to strike gold with the signing, but the Panthers, what we're seeing is that they've struck gold multiple times with some of the guys that they've brought into the organization, and now they're reaping the reward. 2 wins away from another Stanley Cup. You got to credit what they're doing down in South Florida because it's impressive, and it's not easy making those financial decisions to put a really strong team together.
A couple of guys who've really stepped their game up in this postseason, Bennett and Marchand. They're a huge reason why the Cats are just a little bit closer than the Oilers are to lifting the Stanley Cup yet again. But let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. Is this over for Edmonton? Who do you want in goal? Let us know. What has been the biggest key for the Panthers so far to take this 2-1 series lead, and who you got and how many games? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel, man. It is taking off. 4,100 followers and counting. We're trying to get to 5,000 before the end of this series, so we need your help to get there. Get involved in the comment section, like, subscribe, find us wherever you find your podcasts as well, because we are here every night now during the Stanley Cup Final, breaking down all the saves, the scores, the action, and all the storylines in between. You'll hear from the local experts and the guys like us, Tyler Feldman, Cam Stewart. We'll see you tomorrow on Locked On NHL Game Night.